Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As Jonathan said, my name is Frank Turk. Before I get started, let me ask you this. How many of you have heard me before, or this is your first time? How many of you are here this morning? How many don't respond to surveys? My first question is, why are you here? I don't mean for chapel credit. I mean, why are you here on earth? What is the purpose of your life? This is the interactive portion of the program. I mean, is life just a glorified Monopoly game? Get a whole bunch of stuff now because when the game is over, it's all going to go back in the box. Is that what life's about? One day you die and all your stuff goes to somebody else and then that's it. There's no real purpose for life. One preacher to his congregation put it this way. He said, one day you are going to die. And they're going to put you in your best suit or your best outfit. They're going to put you in a box. They're going to dig a hole somewhere. They're going to lower that box into that hole. Then they're going to throw dirt in your face and go back to the church and eat potato salad. Is that it? You just take a dirt nap for all eternity? There is no real purpose to life? Francis Crick, who helped discover the DNA molecule, he looks a little creepy to me. He said there is no purpose to life. In fact, he had an astonishing hypothesis. This was it. He said the astonishing hypothesis is that you, your joys, your sorrows, your memories, your ambitions, your sense of personal identity and free will are in fact no more than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules. In other words, you are nothing but a meat machine. This is called atheistic materialism. You may think you have free will. You may think that you're actually making choices. You may think you're reasoning. You may think there's purpose to your life, but there isn't because you're nothing but a molecular machine. One day you're going to die. Those molecules are going to disassemble themselves, and it's over. Fine, nothing left. If Crick is right, of course, there is no purpose to life. Just get a whole bunch of stuff now because when you die, it's all going back in the box. I actually think there is a real meaning to life, a true purpose to life that everybody can understand and discover in this ancient collection of manuscripts we put under one binding we now call the Bible. Now, when you say you think the Bible is true on college campuses, where I spend most of my time, not necessarily this college campus would think this, but most secular ones do. They think you're nuts. Are you crazy? You think this book is true? You think this book actually is true? It's got miracles in it. We don't believe in miracles anymore. Also, it's written down by religious people. You can't trust what they say. This is nothing but myths and fables. Actually, I think it's quite easy to show that this book is true beyond a reasonable doubt. You only have to answer 4 questions in the affirmative. In other words, if you answer yes to these 4 questions, you can show beyond any reasonable doubt that Christianity is true. Beyond all doubt, no. Beyond a reasonable doubt. What are the 4 questions? Here are the 4 questions. Now that is some pretty grooving music, isn't it? That music is actually from our TV show, which is on every Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Out here in St. Louis, it'd be 8 p.m. and midnight on Wednesday nights. Also on Saturday nights at 9 p.m. here. How many people here have DirecTV? That's what it's on, DirecTV. Like 6 of us. Come on, why not the rest of us? Friends don't let friends watch cable. If you want to get, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, you got to get DirecTV. Actually, that's not true. If you go to our website right there, crossexamined.org, at those times, you can watch the show streaming live, or you can go to our website and get the DVDs. We're also on radio every Saturday morning here. It would be at 9 a.m., but that's podcasted, so you can listen to it anytime you want. We actually have a new app now, the new Cross Examine app, which has all of the podcasts on there. 1 hour a week, we give evidence for Christianity and we cross-examine ideas against it. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, which is known as apologetics, giving evidence for what you believe, then get the app, check out the podcast and the TV show. Now, why are these the 4 questions? Truth, God, miracles, and the New Testament. Well, if there is no truth, if it's just true for you but not for me, or all truth is relative, you hear these claims all the time, right? Then obviously the Bible can't be true. Of course, if there is no truth, then any book written by an atheist can't be true either, right? We're going to see here this morning that there is truth and you can know it. Second question, does God exist? You can't have a word from God if there's no God. If there's no God, throw the Bible away and every other book that talks about God. I hope to show you, probably tomorrow we'll get into this, that there really is a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, moral, personal, intelligent creator out there. There are 3 arguments we're going to look at. 2 of them have scientific evidence to them and one is philosophical. But from those 3 arguments, which are taught in the Bible, but you don't need the Bible to know them, you can see that there really is a theistic God out there. The third question is, are miracles possible? Obviously, the Bible can't be true if miracles are not possible. But I hope to show you tomorrow that not only are miracles possible, but the greatest miracle in the Bible has already occurred, and we have scientific evidence for it. Then and only then can we get to the key question, is the New Testament true? The New Testament doesn't have a prayer if truth doesn't exist, God doesn't exist, or miracles are not possible. But if truth exists, God exists, and miracles are possible, then we can see if we have an accurate, historically reliable account of miracles occurring in the first century to a man named Jesus and his apostles, as evidenced by the 27 handwritten Greek manuscripts we now call the New Testament. Do those documents tell us the truth, or were they written down much later by religious people who were biased and made it up, and the whole thing is a fabrication? We're probably going to get into that on Thursday. Now, some of you are looking at that going, well, is the New Testament, do you believe the Old Testament's true? Well, look, if the New Testament's reliable, you get the Old Testament thrown in. Why? Who's in the New Testament that can authenticate the Old Testament? Jesus, right? If Jesus really is God, as the New Testament documents claim he is, now that's a big if, but if he really is God, then whatever God teaches is true. Jesus taught the entire Old Testament is the Word of God, so if the New Testament's reliable, you get the Old Testament thrown in. Now, this is obviously an abbreviated version of what we have in our book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. The book goes into a lot more detail. There's no way I can cover all this in the amount of, actually I probably could, because I'm originally from New Jersey. All right, that's right. I speak at 150 words a minute with gusts to 350, okay? So if you can't keep up, the book, as Jonathan mentioned, is available on the book table, as well as a 12-part DVD series that goes through all this material in a lot more detail. You can use it in a small group or homeschool or Sunday school or just for your own edification if you want. We go through all this detail with all the PowerPoint and videos and everything. And there's other resources on the book table. And by the way, all the proceeds from the sale of the books and the DVDs will go to feed needy children. Mine, okay? Just so you know. I've got 3 sons. All of them have gone to college. In fact, we still have one in college. The oldest 2 went to, actually they all went to the University of South Carolina, even though we live in North Carolina. And the oldest 2 were interested in the military. I was in the Navy many years ago, which stands for Never Again Volunteer Yourself. I don't know if you know that, but... Actually, I love the Navy, but it's not really good for family life. So when my sons came to me and said, hey, Dad, we want to get in the military. What should we do? I said, look, if you want to fight, go Navy. If you want a nice life, go Air Force. Amen. So they went Air Force. The oldest one is an intelligence officer. They went Air Force ROTC at South Carolina. The oldest one is an intelligence officer for the guys that fly the drones out in Las Vegas. Do you know that all the drones that are flown in the war zones right now are flown from Las Vegas? Did you know that? And you thought there was no real-world application for Xbox. There is. The second son just got his wings in the Air Force just about a month ago. He's going to be flying KC-10s out of Travis Air Force Base in California. And the third son has 1 more year left at South Carolina. He's not in the Air Force, but it means my wife and I get a raise at the end of the year. And it also means we've been empty nesters for like 3 years. Took us a while to get used to that. About 10 minutes. Yeah, that's how long it took to change the locks. Yeah, when you get there, you'll understand. We love our kids, but they're a little messy. Anyway, there's our website, crossexamined.org. All right, and as Jonathan mentioned tonight, if we time this just right, we'll have absolutely no time for your questions. Now, we're going to have questions tonight, as Jonathan mentioned. That's what I meant to say. Questions tonight at the Perk, 7:30, correct? And we can talk about anything, not just this stuff. But we got to start here at the question of truth. Are you guys ready to go? All right, let's start with truth. And whenever you start talking about truth, you always have to start with Jack Nicholson. Right? I mean, Tom Cruise had him on the witness stand and he said to him, "Colonel, I want the truth." And Nicholson said, "You can do better than that." "Colonel, I want the truth." That's right. Well, there's a lot of people out there who can't handle the truth. They're saying, you got your truth, I got my truth, there is truth, no truth, all truth is relative. We'll get to that in a minute. But let's define what we mean by truth. Easy definition of truth. Truth is telling it like it is. If I say here we are at Missouri Baptist University, that would be telling it like it is. If I say here we are in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I'll be on Thursday, that wouldn't be telling it like it is. Or truth is what corresponds to its referent. If when referring to this book, I say this is a Bible, that would be true. If I say it's a Quran, that wouldn't be true. You say, "Frank, I came to chapel for this." This is so obvious. Why are you starting here? Because our first duty in today's culture is to state the obvious. People are claiming there's no truth out there. In fact, I'm here to say that all truth is absolute truth. Something that is true for all persons at all times in all places. There are no relative truths. You say, "I can think of a relative truth." Like what? "Well, yesterday was a little warm. I felt warm yesterday. But I'm sure the people in Alaska, they felt cold." That's relative. No, it's not relative at all. It's absolutely true. For all people, at all times, in all places, when referring to you yesterday, you felt warm. If in fact you really did. Remember, truth is what corresponds to its referent. And it's absolutely true for all people at all times in all places that when referring to people in Alaska yesterday, they felt cold. It's just true. Now, when you say all truth is absolute, people will claim you are very judgmental. In fact, they're going to say things like this. They're going to say, "You know what? There is no truth." Or they might say, "You can't know truth." Or they might say, "All truth is relative." Or my favorite, "It's true for you, but not for me." You've probably heard that one. Or they might say, "No one has the truth." Or if they really get annoyed with you, they might say, "You know what? You ought not judge. You hypocritical Christian. Jesus said don't judge. Why are you judging?" Now, if you can't answer these claims, then obviously you couldn't say the Bible is true. Of course, if you're an atheist and you can't answer these claims, then you couldn't say a book written by an atheist was true, right? So there's got to be something wrong with these claims here. There is. What's wrong with these claims? Does anyone know just by looking at it? What's the problem with these claims? It's the same problem for every one of them. They're what? They are truth claims. They are, which means that every one of these is logically self-defeating. It's a logical self-defeating statement. What's a logical self-defeating statement or self-defeating statement? Here's one. "I can't speak a word in English." Right? Or, "There are no sentences in the English language longer than 3 words." Or, "My brother is an only child." Or, "My parents had no kids that lived." Or, "Everything I say is a lie." Some of you will get that tomorrow. Or, "All generalizations are false." Some of you will never get that one, all right? These are self-defeating statements. They violate the law of non-contradiction. In the book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, we call this the Roadrunner tactic, and I'll show you what I mean by that. You can get the book to actually figure out why we call it the Roadrunner tactic, but let's show you why these are self-defeating. If someone were to ever say to you, "There is no truth," you should ask that person a question. And the way you ask the question is you apply the claim to itself. Apply the claim to itself. So if someone says there is no truth, your question should be what? You could say, "How do you know that?" But it's even clearer if you say what? Is that true? Is it true that there is no truth? Because if it's true that there is no truth, the claim there is no truth claims to be true, but it can't be true if it's true. Did I say that right? You can see it's self-defeating. Now, with this one little tactic, you look like a super genius. How about this one? There's no such thing as absolute truth. What should your question be? Apply the claim to itself. What did you say? Yeah, is that absolutely true? You could say, "Hey, are you absolutely sure?" Can you see that's a self-defeating statement? It's like saying I can't speak a word in English. Now, with this one tactic, again, you look like a super genius. Now, this one is my favorite one. "It's true for you, but not for me." Oh, you know, Christianity may be true for you, but Buddhism's true for me. Now, what do you say to that? If someone says it's true for you but not for me, what question should you ask them? What if my truth says yours is a lie? You could say that, but you just want to apply the claim to itself. This is also self-defeating. It's just a little bit more subtle. If somebody says it's true for you but not for me, say, hey, is that true for everybody? Is true for you but not for me true for everybody? Because if true for you but not for me is true for everybody, then true for you but not for me can't be true because it's true for everybody. I know that can give you intellectual constipation if you think about it long enough. But that's because it's self-defeating. It does not meet its own standard. Actually, there's a more fun way of dealing with this. If somebody says it's true for you but not for me, say, sure, go try that with your bank teller. Yeah, go to your bank teller one day and say, look, the economy's down. I need some extra money. Give me $100,000 out of my account. The bank teller looks at your account and says, I'm sorry, you only have $6.14 in your account. Don't worry. Just say, hey, that's true for you but not for me. Give me the $100,000. You going to get the money? No, if it's true there was only $6.14 in your account, that's true for all people at all times in all places when referring to your account at that time. Or let's say we're going a little fast down here at Highway 40, sometimes called 64. I guess you locals call it 40, right? Is it 64 or 40? What is it? It's both. Oh, so you can you can have two truth claims be true at the same time. Okay. So it's Highway 64. Suppose you're going 90. Cop sees you, pulls you over, walks up to your car, knocks on the glass. You put the window down. He says, you were going 90 in a 55. Very easy to get out of a ticket. You simply look up at him and you go, ha, that's true for you, but not for me. And you speed away. He can't give you a ticket if it's not true for you. No, if it's true you were going 90, that's true for all people at all times, in all places when referring to you at that time. It's just true. Now, I go to a lot of churches and I ask people, I say, hey, do you guys believe this book is true? And most people will say, well, of course. And then I'll say, why? Do you know what answer I get more than any other? What answer do you think I get? Because I have faith. Is that a good answer? Does your faith change whether or not this book is true? Does your faith change whether or not God exists or Jesus rose from the dead? I mean, do you have to believe something to make it true? Do people who don't believe in gravity float away? Hey, look, there's another one. Hey, if you believe, you'll come back. No, that's not the way it works. You say, well, why is the Bible always talking about faith then? Because there's at least two kinds of faith. There's belief that, and then there's belief in. Belief that is getting evidence that God exists, that Jesus rose from the dead, that the Bible is true. That's getting evidence. That's what we call apologetics, getting evidence. But all the belief that in the world won't get you saved, according to Christian theology. James, the half-brother of Jesus, who wrote that little book called James in your New Testament, in James chapter 2, says, even the demons believe that God exists, but they tremble. You see, they know intellectually God exists better than you do, but they don't trust in him. You see, belief that is intellectual. Belief in is not just intellectual, it's also volitional. In other words, you have to accept it, trust in him. In fact, when I first met my wife about 28 years ago, I got evidence that she would be a good wife. But all the evidence in the world didn't make her my wife. I had to take a step of trust in her to ask her to be my wife. And in a momentary lapse of judgment, she said yes. The same is true when it comes to Christ. You can believe all that you want. But if you don't trust in him, God will not force you into heaven against your will. Think about that. If you don't want God now, you're not going to want him in eternity. You decide where you're going to go, and if you don't want him now, he won't force you into his presence for all eternity. So most of the time when the Bible is talking about faith, it's talking about the second kind, belief in, which the better word, the proper word is trust. Faith makes it seem like you have no evidence. That's not the biblical faith. It means once you know that it's true, trust in Christ for your salvation. How about this one? You hear this a lot. There's no truth in anything but science. What's the problem with the claim? Can anyone see it? So Richard Dawkins gets close to saying this. You know, we get all our truth from science. Can anyone see the problem with it? Apply the claim to itself. What would you ask the person who says this? Just ask the question, hey, is that a scientific truth? Can you go into the laboratory and prove that? No, that's a philosophical claim. And what's often forgotten is you can't do science without philosophy. In fact, science is built on philosophy. When you go for a PhD, what does the PH stand for? Philosophy of, whatever it is, philosophy of biology, philosophy of physics, philosophy of history, whatever it is, philosophy undergirds everything we do. And you know, the argument between the Darwinists and the intelligent design people is not an argument over evidence. You know what's an argument over? It's an argument over philosophy. What causes will we consider possible before we even look at the evidence? And then once we have the evidence, how will we interpret the evidence? You see, the Darwinists rule out intelligent causes before they look at the evidence. The intelligent design people say, we're open to intelligent causes, but also natural causes. Well, quite frequently, it could be that the Darwinists are coming to their conclusions not because the evidence points that way, but because they've ruled out the only other alternative. They're assuming what they're trying to prove. They're assuming naturalism is true without ever even looking at the alternative, that there might be intelligence out there. In fact, there's an article on our website, I don't have time to get into it now, but there's an article on the website, crossexamine.org, called Science Doesn't Say Anything, Scientists Do. Science doesn't say anything, scientists do. What do I mean by that? All data needs to be interpreted. When you look at a biological entity, it doesn't say made by Yahweh on there. Neither does it say evolved from the first one-celled creature without intelligent intervention. You have to look at the evidence and then interpret it. And unfortunately, many people, in my view, on the other side of this issue are interpreting the evidence based on their philosophical presupposition. They're not basing the evidence on a fair view of what's actually possible. They've already ruled out intelligence before they looked at the evidence. This is a big one here. You ought not judge. You've heard this. Before we look at what Jesus said about it, what's the problem with the claim logically? Can anyone see? Yeah, it's a judgment. So the next time somebody says, you ought not judge, put your hands on your hips and say, then why are you judging me for judging? Notice this is a judgment. Now, what did Jesus say about judging? Did Jesus say don't judge? Let's assume that the New Testament documents are accurate right now. I haven't gotten to that point. We'll do that by Wednesday or Thursday. Let's assume they're accurate. What does Jesus say about judging? He says in Matthew chapter 7, verse 1 and following, this is the Sermon on the Mount, judge not, lest you be judged. By the same standard you judge others, you'll be judged by that standard. So before you try and take the speck out of your brother's eye, take the log out of your own eye first, then you'll be better able to help your brother. Is Jesus telling us not to judge here? No, he's telling us to take the speck out of our brother's eye. That involves making a judgment. He's simply saying, get the problem out of your life first so you can better help your brother. In other words, this is not a command not to judge. It is a command on how to judge. If you've got that problem in your life, get it out of your life first so you can better help your brother. In other words, don't judge hypocritically, judge rightfully. That's why Jesus says in John 7:24, stop judging by mere appearances and make a right judgment. You know, everybody makes judgments. Think about how many judgments you've made today between right and wrong, good and evil, safe choices from dangerous choices. You'd be dead already if you didn't make judgments. Atheists make judgments. They judge there is no God. Agnostics make judgments. They say, I don't know if there's enough evidence there. Christians, Muslims, everybody makes judgments. The only question is, are your judgments true? I will say this, though, about judging. Jesus did save a very stern rebuke for people who were judgmental. And who were the judgmental ones in his day? Who were they? The Pharisees. And who were the Pharisees? They were the religious and political leaders of Israel. And Jesus went after them. Are you telling me Jesus got involved in politics? Yes! The Pharisees ran Israel politically. Rome delegated most of the authority to them, and Jesus went after them. And he wasn't so nice doing it. In fact, if you think Jesus was a soft, soap, sweet guy who never said a bad word about anything, you have not read Matthew chapter 23. What does Jesus say in Matthew chapter 23 when he's talking to the Pharisees? He says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Oh, you look great on the outside. You're whitewashed tombs, but on the inside, you're full of dead men's bones. You go a mile to make a convert, and then once you make him a convert, you make him twice as much a son of hell as you are. How will you avoid being condemned to hell? gentle Jesus said this? Yes, Jesus was not Barney, okay? Can't we get along, boys and girls? No! He was not Mr. Rogers. Can you say kindness, boys and girls? Well, he was kind most of the time, but he certainly didn't go around saying, this sermon brought to you by the letter E. Jesus was, in fact, if you've heard somebody say, oh, that person is such a saint, he's never said a bad word about anyone. Well, if that's the definition of a saint, Jesus was no saint. Jesus was very direct many times. No, many times, of course, he was very kind and sweet, but other times he was very direct, and sometimes you need to be very direct. Sometimes you just need to tell it like it is. And Jesus did that. Don't buy into this self-defeating idea that you can't tell the truth. You've got to tell the truth. Jesus is the truth, and the truth will set you free. So, of course, you can make judgments. Everybody makes judgments. Just don't be judgmental in doing it. Somebody put it this way. You know what evangelism is? It's just one beggar showing another beggar where the food is. That's all we're doing. One beggar showing another beggar where the food is. Now, we could go through many more of these, but we don't have time here this morning. But this roadrunner tactic, which is the process of turning a claim on itself to expose it as being self-defeating, is an easy way for you to be a lie detector, which reminds me of Homer Simpson. Check this out.
Now we're going to run a few tests. This is a simple lie detector. I'll ask you a few yes or no questions, and you just answer truthfully. Do you understand?
Yes.
Can everybody see that's a self-defeating statement? All right, good. So let's sum this up. The truth about truth. Contrary beliefs are possible, but contrary truths are not possible. You can believe everything's true, but everything can't be true. You can believe the earth is flat if you want, won't make it flat. And objective truths can't be denied without being affirmed. Suppose somebody says there are no objective truths. What should you say to them? Use the roadrunner tactic. Apply the claim to itself. Say, is that an objective truth? If they say yes, then they defeat themselves. If they say no, it's just in me, the subject, it's just my subjective opinion, then you ought to say, well, why should I believe it then? You can't get away from objective truth. Truth exists. There's one problem, however, with truth. Actually, there's not a real problem with truth. There's a problem with us regarding truth. Pascal put it this way. He said, people almost invariably arrive at their beliefs not on the basis of proof, but on the basis of what they find attractive. Are we just believing Christianity because we find it attractive? A lot of people do. If you ask them why Christianity were true, they couldn't tell you. Of course, the sword cuts the other way, too. Are atheists just believing in atheism because they find it attractive? Many atheists admit that. In fact, a question I always ask atheists, particularly on college campuses during the Q&A, when things can get a little tense. I usually stop them and say, if they're getting a little hostile, I'll say, sir, do you mind if I ask you a question before we go on? No, sure, go ahead. If Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? On 3 occasions in the past 2 years, I've had atheists yell back at me, no! No? Well, what are we even doing here then? Why don't we just go have pizza? Why are you here? Wait a minute, wait, you claim to be an atheist, a beacon of reason. Never mind if atheism's true, reason doesn't exist because we're just molecules in motion, but let's leave that aside. I ask you, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian and you say no? How is that reasonable? How's that rational? It's not. Why would you say no? The reason, and many atheists have admitted this, is because they don't want to bow their knee to a creator. They want to do things their way. They don't want anybody getting in the way. Thomas Nagel, famous atheist at New York University, said, it's not just that I don't believe in God, it's that I don't want there to be a God. I don't want the world to be that way. He said, I have a cosmic authority problem. And I think atheists like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, who died about 1.5 years ago, I had the opportunity to debate Christopher a couple times. You can see the debates on our website for free, crossexamined.org. But he wasn't just an atheist, he was an anti-theist. somebody who said, I don't want there to be a God, I'm against God. Nagel said, I, Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, we have a cosmic authority problem. We don't want there to be a God. Is there evidence that God exists? Yes, there is. That's what we're going to cover tomorrow. Jonathan, we're done? See you tomorrow.